All right, welcome back to the LOOPcast. Today, joined by Josh and Erica, and the wait is over. Democrats have selected a vice president. Looks like we're getting not the Jewish guy, not the gay guy, and not the astronaut. We got Tim Walz from Minnesota.
The Lutheran Marxist.
Woo! Josh thrilled with that pick. Josh did grow up in Minnesota. Any general, just immediate feelings, thoughts, emotions on Tim Walz?
I woke up with a headache this morning, and I'm labeling it Tim Walz. I mean, this guy is such... I mean, the only good thing I can say about this selection, the only good thing, is that for the first time in 20 years, the Democratic Party will not have a pro-abortion Catholic on their national ticket. I mean, that's some small, tiny relief.
Consolation.
It's, yeah, so the only Catholic running for national office is the pro-life J.D. Vance, but that's a tiny little note. Tim Walz is absolutely everything that makes me want to vomit. It's everything that's bad about politics, about American life, and he is just reprehensible in just about every way imaginable. Everything I hate about white Catholic Christians is embodied in both David French and Tim Walz. I mean, these guys are absolutely apologetic for everything that they do. They love to try to pander to every minority, to women, to gays, to blacks, to American Indians, everything, by just talking about how reprehensible their parents and grandparents were. And I'm not that kind of white guy. I'm the white guy that loves abortion and loves Marxism.
I'm different.
And loves DEI and all the racist garbage of the Project 1619 or whatever. You're hard pressed to find any good redeeming quality about Tim Walz. I think he is one of the most loathsome human beings in politics today.
Yeah. And before we get into all the different parts, because his record's very clear, I just want to say what's up to everyone here in the chat. We have someone from Canada, first time joiner.
Oh, Canada.
Welcome. Said hi there from Canada, first time joining the live chat. You all inspired me to request an absentee ballot. We could use all the votes that we can get.
If he comes if he escapes Canada, don't go through Minnesota.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Avoid Minnesota. But yeah, thank you to everyone here joining us live. We do this live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. One thing you can really do to help, just leave a like on this episode, share us around, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And then what's up to everyone listening on the podcast? This is done, as we said, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We appreciate everyone being here. And you can leave us a review. That's a way to really help the program right now. And thank you to all the champions that support us. So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about Walz Mania. Is he America's dad? Is communism another word for neighborliness? We're going to find out today. We also have another squad takedown. So Cori Bush just got boat raced in her primary.
Amen.
So we'll leave that as some dessert for Josh to talk about, to be excited. And then we have some fun in the Twilight Zone. We got a little Venezuela talk, a little Olympics talk. Should be a great episode. Thank you all for joining. We appreciate you so much. So I think just to start on Tim Walz here, I just would like to go over his history. I mean, he's been the governor now for 2 terms. I'm going to do a quick screen share here at Catholic Vote. We have a great analysis. Harris picks Walz. Here's a look at his record. So if we want to get into major things, he is definitely by far, of all the people put up, the most left-wing choice. Most far left by far. He himself said that he is the most progressive candidate. He's actually to the left of Nancy Pelosi on abortion, which imagine you could even do that. That's confirmed by Nancy Pelosi herself.
She's like, tone it down. It's like, nope.
Yeah. So abortion's one thing that definitely sticks out. Really brands himself as a socialist, a democratic socialist, as he calls himself. But on the White Dudes for Harris call has said that socialism is really just another term for neighborliness, which I'm sure will be played on TVs across America for the night up until November.
Like that neighborliness. I mean, Minnesota nice. They're good neighbors. Socialism is just neighborliness. Like, why don't you just tell that to the 120 million people who have died from socialism? Yeah, exactly. Real neighborliness. Yeah. Wait a minute, Walz. You're the governor that set up a hotline so people could call in and say, hey, I think my neighbor is trying to do a Thanksgiving dinner.
That's
with a
neighborly.
bunch of people during COVID. Give me a break. Tim Walz, if we were in any normal country, this guy would have been impeached, convicted from office, and people would be like, should we throw him in jail? Instead, we're going to give him a promotion.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, it's funny, even in his rally in Pennsylvania when he was selected, he came up and said, we have a saying in Minnesota where I'm from, mind your own damn business, basically. And immediately everyone was like, remember when you started a COVID hotline to snitch on your neighbors?
Snitch line?
Like,
yeah.
You want to talk about
own business? What?
Socialism, communist activities? Like snitching on your neighbors is like rule number one in all type of communist societies. Is like, he was a part of the most extreme lockdowns during COVID.
I was actually born in Minnesota, and Tim Walz was not. He was born in Nebraska, where he got a DUI for driving 90 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour zone. Just want to throw that out there. So,
well, someone actually in the chat pointed out he is from Nebraska as well, so not a native Minnesotan. And we actually did get, and we're going to keep going down his record, but we have an employee here, Jason. Shout out Jason. He works on a development team. And I wonder if we have any other Minnesotans here that kind of share this sentiment. But I thought it'd be worth sharing just from someone who basically spent most of his life in Minnesota, was definitely his home. So I just need to read straight off. My young family and I fled Minnesota in 2021 because of this man's lack of leadership. Fled. We saw enough. Couldn't take any more of his woke agenda destroying the state we used to love. We left everything behind. Everything. When I saw Kamala Harris foolishly choose him as her VP candidate, well, all the intense emotions of watching my beloved Twin Cities burn like hell came back again. Only this time the fire burns within my soul. When my then governor Walz did nothing for hours upon hours of complete Twin Cities chaos, I was reminded of all that utter disgust for his senile, inept leadership style. I, like many lifelong, multi-generational Minnesotans, were appalled that Minnesota nice I grew up with 40 plus years no longer existed, and this little man, Tiny Tim, did nothing. I'll never forget how he was even called out on live television, on a liberal station, mind you, by the most respected local TV news anchor in the state, Julie Nelson. Quote, someone needs to tell us what is going on and what the plan is. We have reached out to the governor. We are getting no response. During these riots, she too watched in confused horror as everything burned and was looted. I cannot imagine any crisis for the United States where wisdom and experience need to lead to this man is found anywhere near a position of authority, given his failed background. He lied to Minnesotans then, and he will lie to you now. Don't even get me started on how he despises my 6 young children for even being born, for those kids not attending his public indoctrination camps he calls public schools, or for none of my kids for supporting Rainbow Mafia tattoos he would like to place upon them. Additionally, don't get me started on the 2 more weeks to flatten the curve, COVID response, or how he bullied people into the jabs. We don't have the time to waste. Rather, we must spend every second we have keeping this fool out of our lives once and for all. Tim Walz took Minnesota from being one of the best places to live on earth, a beautiful but chilly place of peace and neighborliness, to his mission of creating our state into a place of extreme radical wokeness with little hope except a hope of more taxation upon us servants. He continually looks down upon families like mine. He desires to continue to create Minnesota into nothing more than a cold California. Don't let him ruin my country
California.
like he has Minnesota.
California.
My family and I have fled Minnesota because of his politics. Should we win, we should think about leaving his country and get our own back. Shout out Jason.
It's worth pointing out during those riots, George Floyd riots in Minneapolis. My brother, by the way, works in Minneapolis, and he was not even able to go to his office for like weeks and weeks because it was a public health consideration. It was not safe.
And who couldn't forget the images of the police station burning, like the third precinct set on fire, gutted with flames. I mean, it's just, it was shocking. And his failure to call in the National Guard, he sat on it for hours.
No, not hours, days.
Days.
The Minneapolis called it, and it took 3 days. In fact, Governor Walz's daughter, Hope Walz, was tweeting out like, yeah, dude, don't worry, the National Guard's not coming, and basically let all the rioters know you're good to go and you have a clean slate. And so 1,500 buildings burned, causing $500 million in damages.
Yeah, this is how I spent my yesterday for anyone who follows me on Twitter. But I basically put together this mega thread. It was a super interesting article, and I do want to credit the guy who wrote it. I was just trying to get more exposure on it. This guy, John Phelan, at Minnesotanomics, he wrote an article based upon the local newspaper in Minneapolis, FOIA requesting conversations between the governor, the mayor, the police chief, basically to get a picture on, so why was no action taken for 4 days while Minneapolis and the world watched Minneapolis burn to the ground, basically. And what he found, it was like, I remember living through that and being shocked. It was just shocking and jarring to see on TV. and it felt like a cloud of chaos. No one knew what was going on. You basically knew something was wrong, but you didn't know what. And then once you get to this article, I think all of his progressive stuff to me is bad, of course, and worthy of critique. To me, this is the worst of the worst, the crown jewel, and a potential opportunity for Americans who were disgusted by this to actually punish the Democrats for how they acted during these riots. Because he basically, to give a quick summary, he shut down requests for the National Guard to come in to protect things like the 3rd Precinct for political points, because he didn't want to be the guy that was known for sending in the military to stop his own city from burning down, because it would look bad for optics. He actually got requests from the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, to come in hours after this started, and it took him a couple days to even send 90 of the National Guard, not even to the precinct. At that point, they had already completely given it up, and it was burning to the ground, and we had cameras on it for days. So it took 4 days for him to actually bring in the National Guard. And once they brought it in, of course, it all stopped, but not after a whole strip of Minneapolis is completely burned to the ground. Businesses that will never come back, citizens that were endangered. It's terrible. All for political points.
Give some context. Literally, the governor's mansion is across the river in St. Paul, 5 miles away. So it's not like what?
Well, his wife gave an interview. You can see the smoke. Right. Yes. She said she would leave the windows open so she could smell the tires burning, because it gave her some kind of thrill that, blacks were now rising up or whatever story she was sifting.
But it's weird.
It's weird. That's weird. That is weird.
Let's watch that. This is Tim Walz's wife.
Being interviewed from like 100 feet away.
First days, when there were riots, I could smell the burning tires. And that was a very real thing. And I kept the windows open for as long as I could, because I felt like that was such a touchstone of what was happening.
And to be clear, what was happening in her mind was she is being the apologetic white woman. I'm sorry, like, this is the blacks rising up and they're finally taking control of their lives. And so I'm smelling the tire fumes and reparation for the sins of my evil ancestors who colonized. And it's so weird. But I wish this was the worst.
Right.
It gets worse.
Well, what's
with Tim Walz.
What's worse to you, Erica?
I'm just going to go over what I like to call the gay stuff. This is Tim Walz, not only total failure as a governor in the middle of a national pandemic, COVID emergency folly, riots in his streets, but let's see who's excited about Walz. This is going to tell us a lot. Who's excited that Harris picked him? Well, first of all, GLAAD is very excited. So gays and lesbians against something. I forget GLAAD. What's GLAAD, Josh? Help me out.
They're notorious.
They're notorious.
Notorious nonprofit for LGBT.
Yeah.
Or something.
I like to say against democracy, but I think it's affirming democracy. All right. The Human Rights Campaign, they're really excited. The Advocate, pink.com, very excited. They're excited because Tim Walz is also known for making Minnesota a refuge for LGBT children, meaning that kids who are living in states that ban sterilization and genital surgeries on kids can be carted to Minnesota by their parents to receive this treatment, and that they're going to block any out-of-state subpoenas that would send the families back across state lines, etc. This was a bill that he signed in 2023. It also ensures that the kids coming from other states can enjoy the benefits of the Minnesota state taxpayers. And let's take a look at what Minnesota state taxpayers are funding when it comes to transgender transitional surgeries. They are covering hysterectomies, vaginectomies, mastectomies, breast reduction, chest reconstruction, penile prosthesis, or I could go on and on. It just gets grosser than that. That is what Minnesota Medicaid will cover for people. House Bill 146, I want to go over this one especially, because this isn't just about, well, you're free to do you and mind your own business. House Bill 146, which he signed and campaigned for, allows the removal of a child from their home if their parents do not consent to trans so-called gender affirming care. Their kids can be taken away. So this is a quote from Thomas Becket Fund. Children who are being denied gender affirming care, which is defined as everything from therapy to hormone blockers to transition surgery to what amounts to the definition for a child in need of protection or services in Minnesota, the courts are allowed to take emergency custody of that child. That's what this bill did. And he signed it. He campaigned for it. He also banned conversion therapy, quote unquote. And we hear these bad things about conversion therapy, that this is people who want to tell gays that you can like pray the gay away, or you can, if you have gender dysphoria and you think you're a girl, we can help you get back into the right mindset that your body tells you that you are a man so you can stay a man. Conversion therapy. But what it comes down to is psychiatrists and psychologists who want to help minors who have gender dysphoria and confusion about their body to become unconfused and comfortable in the body that God gave them. Those healthcare providers can't practice medicine there because that would be considered conversion therapy. And that bill attacks the religion. There is no religious conscience protections. There is no freedom of religion protections in this bill. And he signed it. He also signed, this gets even better, in 2023, this wasn't even a bill that went through the legislature. Tim Walz crafted an executive order, March of 2023, that weaponizes the state departments of health, the Department of Commerce, Department of Human Rights, to investigate unfair or deceptive practices related to the denial of gender-affirming healthcare services, which again is legalese for if you're trying to help children be comfortable in the body that God gave them, that's conversion therapy and we can come after you. This guy is bad news.
Well, not only that, obviously, he's mentioned of gender-affirming care, which is to mutilate children's bodies.
Exactly.
Well, Minnesota's a sanctuary state for LGBTQ, I think also.
Yeah.
For trans.
Yeah, that was trans. Yeah, LGBTQ trans QA plus. Yeah, I could go.
Yeah, I mean, when someone says who they are, it's like, you gotta believe them.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say, when someone says who they are, you got to believe them. Like if someone's to the left of Pelosi on abortion, like and I want to know from you, Josh, you make your point first. I got a question for you after.
All right. So like, if you remember, Trump recently had said, there are radical Democrats who actually believe not just in abortion up until the day of the birth, but after. And he talked about how the former governor of Virginia just let the baby and said, "Oh, do you want the baby to survive?" And they just let it die. And the reporters lose their minds every time he says this. Like, that's not true. That's totally made up a lie.
All the fact checkers come out.
And they lose it because they realize this is totally politically toxic. Remember, the corporate media are Democrats, so they hate that when you try to hurt Democrats. They're not equal arbiters. And my screen just stopped for a second there. Again,
you're still rolling, Josh. I got you.
Doesn't want me to say this.
The devil does not want this to come out.
We see you good, Josh.
All right. But I got to echo what Roger Severino just tweeted out yesterday, that post-birth abortion, so-called, it's obviously just infanticide, is actually real. And both Harris and Walz support it. At least 5 babies were born alive after botched abortions and were left to die under Governor Walz's watch. 2 of these struggling babies were given comfort care instead of medical care, allegedly in violation of Minnesota state law. How did Governor Walz respond to this? By repealing the very law exposing and outlawing this horror to begin with, and replacing it with an abortion on demand at the front end and infanticide on the back end. So again, we don't know how many kids are left to die on the table after an botched abortion anymore. You know why? Because he doesn't make you report it anymore.
Yeah, he got rid of mandatory reporting.
That's why he's more pro-abortion than even Nancy Pelosi. It's like, how is that even possible? Yeah.
And
this man is sick.
This man
is gross. This man is weird.
Yeah, no doubt. So I've seen a couple of people in the chat talk about the Minnesota bishops, and Erica, I know that you were talking about the Minnesota bishops as well. And I think it's worth addressing at this point because it is a frustrating statement from my POV. So what exactly did the Minnesota Catholic Conference come out and say?
Yeah. So they made a statement yesterday. I'm just gonna read it.
Yeah, let me pull up the tweet.
Yeah, the tweet's right there in the link. All right. So we congratulate Governor Walz on his selection as the Democratic vice presidential nominee and assure him of our prayers. We are proud to have worked together with him to enact a nation-leading child tax credit and promote the well-being of immigrant Minnesotans. We can dig into that later. Yet we have also had areas of strong disagreement, including protecting the innocent unborn from abortion, protection of children from manifestations of gender ideology, and the importance of parental rights and education. In some areas, such as religious liberty, we have appreciated his willingness to hear our concerns and change course. As he steps into the national spotlight, Minnesota Catholic Conference remains committed to constructive engagement with him, ensuring that Catholic perspectives are heard and respected at all levels of government. Okay, can I just say, gays for Hamas, chickens for KFC. This man wants to eat Catholics alive. Like, I appreciate that we have to be political sometimes. But what time is it in Minnesota? Governor Walz it's hard to imagine someone who is more anti-Catholic. And yes, I've seen all over Twitter, I've seen Catholics coming from the left saying things like, well, but he gave free breakfast and lunch to the children in the public schools, or he's really good on child tax credits. And so he's kind of like JD Vance, really. I mean, he's pro-family policy. I saw that. And I just want to make clear to everyone in the chat, like, here's the difference, right? JD Vance wants well-crafted family policy. He wants to support families and children by getting the state out of the business of being the parent and getting the state out of the business of being all things to the child. Governor Walz wants to give free breakfast and lunch to the children whose parents have been co-opted by the state. He wants the state to replace the family, to replace the church. JD Vance wants the state to get out of the way of those institutions. That's the difference between free lunch from Governor Walz, child tax credits from Kamala Harris, and child tax credits from Donald Trump or JD Vance. It's an anthropological, philosophical difference. And these are the two Americas we have to choose between in this election. So making your bed with Governor Walz and wanting to work with him, all well and good. I get it. But I think it is chickens for Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just amounts to, like, again, there's this impulse in the church. It's not restricted just to the bishops, but there's other people inside the church out, that are not ecclesiastical that also have this impulse. Like, I want to try to find something nice to say about someone while mentioning the problems I have with them. And it's like, okay. I don't get the impulse. I mean, like, in other words, why is it that we should be such cheap dates? Like, okay, so let's say we actually think free breakfast is a good idea for kids. Sure, great, fine, whatever. But, like, could you also, like, not mutilate the bodies of 5-year-olds in surgeries?
I gotta be chill
and set them up for a lifetime of misery? Could you also, like, I don't know, maybe not, like, support people that, like, murder babies and stuff like that? So, like, this is what frustrates me. It's like, I know actually several of these bishops in Minnesota, I actually consider them to be good people. I just feel like this is a very misguided approach where you just, like, well, I mean, congratulations for being selected for this important position. That's good. It's an honor, I guess. And it's like, well, I mean, why do you have to say that? Like, I mean, I don't know.
But again, I guess
if you don't have something nice to say about somebody, don't say anything at all. Maybe you should have just said nothing at all. Yeah,
maybe you should have said nothing at all because it feels very selective. I didn't hear any of these statements when Trump was elected.
They do it all the time.
I didn't.
Actually.
You know what I mean?
All the time. No, I mean, like, the bishops probably from Ohio probably said something nice if they were asked about JD Vance. Like, oh yeah, good. I mean, it's standard kind of typical stuff, and that's why we kind of say maybe you should not do this kind of stuff anymore. I mean, Jude, Harris Waltz. I mean, these are the people that are going to transform the United States into Venezuela in a few years. Right. Why would we do this?
Venezuela.
And we do have a Venezuela comparison, but even on the immigration front too, we didn't even talk about. He had a news hit where he's like, walls don't work. I want to create a factory making ladders so that people can climb over, which I know. And it's so
actually,
funny.
what doesn't work is Governor Walz.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are walls that doesn't work.
But back to the fact checking front, what was hilarious about that to me is like, okay, there's that news clip. I think he was on with some liberal anchor and he makes that joke. And the fact check is like, no, you guys are stupid for thinking he's serious. He was obviously making a joke, fact check false. And it's like, that's not the point. And it's unbelievable that you would even narrow it down to that point. The point is that he's completely undermining the sovereignty of our own country and the sovereignty of our own leaders to protect that country. And even in his policy, while he was the governor of Minnesota, law to mandate that everyone in the state can get driver's license, including illegal immigrants. I mean, like,
healthcare.
What are you doing? Healthcare, illegal immigrants,
illegals.
sanctuary state, not going to cooperate with ICE. I mean, like, if there's ever a time for us to be able to punish like the worst, most progressive policies of the country, now's the time. You have the opportunity in the ballot vote right here. I think that this ticket just became that much more noxious to your everyday average independent voter that's like, hey, I don't really want stuff that's super extreme. And it's like, you've just invited all of the worst memories from the past 4 years into your ticket.
And yet, right. And yet the liberal mainstream media, the Democrat shills, they have immediately embraced Walz as, hey,
folksy.
He is the most moderate guy she could have picked. He hunts.
He's rural.
He's rural.
He carves butter.
America's dad.
America's dad. Can we please play this clip, Pogo, from
Did you, by the way, they said that of
Molly
Tim
John
Kaine,
Fast here.
America's dad. It's all BS.
This
so
is
some of you may know my contentious, a little bit of a tenuous relationship with Molly Jong. She blocked me on Twitter. But yeah, so we have this clip.
Twitter?
Molly Jong Fast.
yeah. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
They're
she's
BFFs.
a piece of work.
Here we go.
This encapsulates.
So I have interviewed Tim Walz before, so I knew what he could do. And I feel like and Democratic governors knew what he could do because he was the head of the Democratic Governors Association. So when I saw that he was in contention, and he called me and said he was in contention, and I thought to myself, this guy is really a good orator. And what I thought was that it was a reach out to rural voters, because here's a guy, he ice fishes, he's a hunter, he does butter carving, which again is not such a popular thing in urban areas. I mean, he's really a sort of, he is a rural person, and he went to college on the GI Bill. He was the highest ranking enlisted man. This is a person who is really part of this rural America, and he really makes the case for how government programs can help people. His father died when he was young, and he enlisted in the Army to pay for college. And I think that is a really important, we don't necessarily hear that message so much in politics today. And so I really do think, I sort of thought in my head, this guy, he really is kind of a rural American success story. And remember, he was born.
The honest to God truth is the transformation of politics in the last 15, 20 years. One of the things that have happened, I live in a rural area, and let me tell you something. We rural voters have finally woken up and figured out what's going on. Okay. Maybe it was because of the internet. Because you get these guys like John Tester, the senator out of Montana, who's hopefully going to go down in flames here in a couple of months and lose the re-election finally. But he's the kind of youngster who's like, I drive a truck and I got a bolo tie and I love abortion. And I'm not going to say that. And then all the voters think, he's a rural guy and he's one of us. And these guys get reelected, and it drive me crazy. That's why I used to have hair. I'd pull my hair out. Like, why are you voting for these Marxists who drive a pickup truck and they talk about their gun and hunting when they actually hate everything you stand for? Mm-hmm. And I would just scream at the rooftops, like, don't you guys get it? And over time, I think actually because of the internet, people start looking at and seeing these politicians in their records instead of a commercial or two while they're watching like the latest CBS CSI show. Oh yeah, that guy seems like he's one of us.
He seems nice.
And Tim Walz realized this as the rural voters were waking up. He's like, ruh-roh, Raggy. And he decides, because he was representing the rural 1st District of Minnesota, the Southern Minnesota District I know very well. And he's like, I know my goose is going to be cooked. And so he decides to run for governor because that's that district of his that he had kind of won up there in southern Minnesota flipped to red. and it's been ruby red ever since. And he got the message, like, I gotta run for governor. I remember thinking, run for governor, like, that's crazy. Like, the voters are gonna pick him.
He made it,
and they did. And by the way, this is what Steve Kornacki actually is a political analyst with MSNBC, and he's honest, which is kind of amazing. And he's like, look, if you look at his gubernatorial races, he's actually performing very poorly in rural areas. This idea that, I like to ice fish and I hunt and I'm one of these guys. Like, my family's originally, my mom's family is from Stearns County in Minnesota. They did not vote for this guy at all. It's like, you look at the rural areas, he got his votes because he ran up the score in Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Right.
He's not, the rural voters in Minnesota absolutely did not vote for this turkey at all. So the idea that, oh gosh, it's just funny to watch Molly see that.
I think the opposite of what they're saying. This is surprising. The opposite of what they're saying this is as a Harris move is what's happening. And so while the media is like, this is Harris expanding her base and reaching out to middle America and building bridges and unifying the country because, she's from the coast and he's from the middle. And so it's all I loved Rich Lowry was like, Tim Walz is an MSNBC's anchor idea of a folksy politician who can appeal to middle America. That was great.
Yes.
Good shout out to Rich Lowry there.
Yeah.
But what she's actually doing is doubling down on her extreme progressive leftist Marxist views. Because as the Catholic Vote analysis said, it was a great job. This is her going as far left as she could. Mark Kelly would have been more centrist than him. Shapiro would have been more centrist than him.
Here's the thing.
She is all in for the extreme left.
Here's my take. And we'll see if because I was inches from being right on my Shapiro connection or prediction, and Josh was giving me a hard time. No, it's never going to happen. And it did not happen. I think that this is an attempt by Democrat leadership, understanding that they're probably going to lose this election. I do. And I'm not saying it's going to happen because everyone needs to vote, but I'm saying it's not super great chances right now. So this is their version of moving cultural norms and political norms, even in a race that they don't think they can win. So they're basically burning Walz, in my opinion, by choosing someone that didn't make any sense. It would have made much more sense to choose Shapiro, much more sense to choose Kelly. And they're going to be able to push the goalpost further left, even if they lose. And then when people, as most times happen, if Trump becomes president for 4 years, they're going to look for an alternative. The alternative is going to be much more further left already by nature. And then they can start throwing in some of the superstars, the Gavin Newsoms, the Gretchen Whitmers, because they're not burning those candidates right now. And I still think they see Josh Shapiro, Mark Kelly as the future of the party, as their popularity rates suggest. I mean, Josh Shapiro, 63% popular in Pennsylvania. That was a slam dunk if she chooses him. And of course, there's the Jewish problem, but her husband's Jewish. So I don't understand. I think they handled this so poorly in a lot of ways. My only thought is it's a strategic move because what they did to Shapiro by basically embarrassing him, making him publicly renounce his Jewishness in a very embarrassing way. It almost felt like a humiliation trial. And then to not choose him is like, well, what are you doing? Now you've just angered all these traditional Jewish people who are Democrat voters, reliable Democrat voters for a long time. And now they have to think like, am I too Jewish for the party now? If we're too Jewish for the vice presidential pick, I mean, it was hilarious even watching CNN's analysis after they chose Walz. They were like trying to apologize for the fact that he was Jewish. It was like, yeah, there's some anti-Semitism involved. No question. I don't think anyone would question that. They have a real split in the Democrat Party on where they stand on that. So, yeah, I think that it's
I got to push back, though.
All right. I'd love to hear your perspective, but.
Well, I mean, look, if you look at the rolling averages right now of the political polls, actually, for the first time in this entire campaign, the Democrat candidate is leading by the average of the polls. So Harris has got like a 1.5 lead in the average of polls. So this idea that the Democrats are convinced that they can't win it, I don't buy that. Like, it's 90 days or so till election day and you're in it. Like, does that mean that they have equal chances of winning? You might still give the advantage to Trump, given this might be just a 2-week sugar high. But then again, she's going to be rolling into her convention. Might get a bump from that as well. So, and then, you start running out of time. And so far right now, the strategy of running a campaign where she does not expose herself to tough questions by the media is working because the media is allowing it. So why not run out the clock? I mean, that's their strategy. So this idea that the Democrats think they can't win it, I don't agree with that.
Okay, but then what's the rationale?
You're trying to come up with an explanation for why it would be allowed to have such a radical Marxist, communist, left-wing guy as the running mate. But the fact of the matter is, sometimes people are boxed in. There was no opportunity for the Democratic Party to pick someone other than Kamala Harris, because how could you? Like, if Biden's basically been nuked as an option, then you have to go with her. You're not going to bypass a black woman as the nominee because she's been vice president for the last 3 years.
I'm tracking.
You have to do that. You can't just say who would be the best person to run. You can't do that. Okay, so then you have to pick her. And then her pick, that whoever she wants, is ultimately who you have to pick for VP. So if you actually got, Nancy Pelosi drunk, which happens about every night, and pulled her aside and said, who would be the best person for Kamala Harris to pick as a running mate? She would say, well, Josh Shapiro or Mark Kelly. And basically look at the polling in Michigan and see how much of a detriment it would have having a Jewish running mate for all the Muslims that live in Dearborn. And if it was too bad, and it must have been too bad, then it's like, too bad. Josh Shapiro would have helped you win Pennsylvania. But if you lose Michigan from it, then go with Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly is a boring guy. He's like, because in politics, people confuse the word moderate with boring. Mark Kelly is very boring, so he doesn't seem like a radical, but he is total radical on all the issues. He supports the worst people and the worst policies possible, okay? But who cares? It's not the presidential candidate. So you could have put up Mark Kelly, astronaut, show footage of him in the shuttle and spending a year in space or whatever, all this kind of fun stuff. And, and the sympathy, because his wife was the congresswoman who got shot. They could have run with this for days. It would have been smart.
And he carries none of the baggage from BLM riots.
Kamala Harris did not want a governor like a Shapiro who would actually say, okay, what issues can I run on? What can I do? From all the reports, she wanted a loyal foot soldier who would say, yes, ma'am, sort of the Tim Kaine beta dude. And she found one in Tim Walz. The thing is, Mark Kelly would have done the same thing, though. Mark Kelly is a man. I mean, there's a difference between being in the military and being in NASA. I get it, but you still follow orders. And you could have said to Mark Kelly, are you going to follow orders? And he would have said, yes, ma'am. You could have had an astronaut whose wife was shot. It would have been sympathetic. And instead, you picked this grumpy, Marxist guy who screams in the TV about how he's more pro-abortion than anyone else and he loves socialism. It's like, you're doubling down. The voters have said the biggest issues are, inflation, immigration, and crime. Those are the biggest concerns for voters. And you just picked a blue state governor who gave illegal immigrants free health care, driver's license. You let the city of Minneapolis burn for days. I mean, you're weak on all these fronts. And you're doubling down on it. I don't understand it. I think it's just because he got on the podcast and said J.D. Vance was weird. He called Trump a bastard.
He did it.
I love it.
He gets credit for the J.D. Vance's weird talking point.
He does.
And I also have to say, too, total scumbag move for him to get up at the rally and make couch jokes about.
Yeah, he made a reference to it. So
made a reference to it.
References to made up stuff that of him, and I'm not going to say it on this program because it's a family program.
It's a family program, and there's stuff going right back. You're definitely playing with fire, but I don't know. Do they even make claims to being the party of decency? We brought decency back in the ballot.
They do actually.
They're making jabs about Twitter jokes on stuff that's extremely crass and inappropriate. It's like, okay, game on. I mean, we're dealing with communists here, Marxists for sure.
I honestly
they don't care.
think those two are communists.
Oh yeah, it's like if you could just dream assemble the most liberal ticket possible, you have the most liberal senator from the most liberal state and the most liberal governor in the country. You've now got them on the ticket. There's no attempts to moderate. Like you said, they would have gone Mark Kelly. So I don't know. I just think I think
shame on any Catholic that would allow these two people to rise to power.
Yeah.
You cannot let them in.
Also,
the White House.
He is a Lutheran from the denomination of Lutheran that started the Sparkle Creed or says the Sparkle Creed. If anyone's familiar with that,
too perfect.
It's good. It's
the
a good
Sparkle
one.
Creed. Do you want to share it with us?
No, dude, I can't do the
say
Sparkle,
the Creed.
No, I refuse to say the Sparkle
the
Creed.
thing is, people don't understand this. I mean, the Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Twin Cities there, Minneapolis is hyper liberal. It gives San Francisco a run for its money. The only thing difference is they don't have as much fecal matter on the sidewalks of San Francisco. But that's about the only difference, man. And that doesn't mean they don't have a lot of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited for the debate, though. I want to watch Vance and Walz up there on the stage.
Vance has already been good, by the way. There was a clip of him on the plane talking about, the last time that Harris and Walz teamed up, Walz let the city burn, and then Harris was bailing out the few that actually got arrested. I was like, that's actually pretty solid.
And then a debate. I mean, you got Walz, who was a member of the National Guard, and he quit right before that. His unit got called up to Iraq. And then apparently there's rumors that he exaggerated his title and rank.
He did.
And so, we're going to have to look into that. So you have that comparison against J.D. Vance, who after 9/11 decides to enlist and goes over to Iraq as a member of the Marine Corps.
Right. He's actually over there. Yeah. I
mean,
shout out that debate. Let's go.
Shout out to my boy Tony. I don't know if he's usually here live in the chat, but he served and was talking about the different ranks. And it's a little over my head. I wasn't in the military, but there's a lot swirling around right now about him leaving basically right before he would have been deployed to Iraq. And then you're like, with that, it's almost hard to say because maybe he was really leaving at the right time, whatever. That's not even my problem. My problem is that he went and campaigned on gun control and said, we cannot have on the streets weapons that I carried into war. And it's like, well, wait a second. You never did. You didn't go to war, buddy. Like you can't use the stolen valor there to try to compensate guns. So if Tony's in the chat, maybe you can give an explanation. It has to do with military rank. He's exaggerating in some way. So yeah, just by all accounts, kind of a little bit slimy. But okay, if I could get back to the Molly Jong Fast My Girl, which unblock me.
Of course.
Unblock me if you have any character. But she was describing Tim Walz as this like rural success story was the exact term that she used. I'm not exaggerating. 2 weeks ago, she called J.D. Vance, who grew up in rural Ohio, escaped poverty and drugs, used the GI Bill to go to college because he served our country in Iraq, and then went on to become a successful businessman, eventually run for Senate. She called him a white supremacist, great replacement theory, racist because he wants to have more white babies. Now, a few problems with that. One, he's married to an Indian woman and has biracial children would be the immediate problem that comes to mind. But two, how could you call one man, like it'd be so easy to be an MSNBC commentator. Maybe I should try it sometime. You just get your talking points straight from the DNC. You don't have any shred of character or critical thinking, and you just pair it out exactly what they want you to pair it out. Because that exact description could be used for J.D. Vance. Almost exactly. He did exactly everything that she's saying that makes this guy so folksy and rural. And yet appealing. He's a white supremacist, great replacement theory racist. Like it's like another feather in the cap for just like how disingenuous the regime
Mercer,
media
it's time
is.
for your tagline.
Oh, Mercer's in the chat, probably fighting people. Yeah,
it's almost like they're lying.
We need a button. Maybe I get a button. I could just play it when I want. But it was kind of infuriating seeing that. Like you guys, it's like you're not even trying to appear like you're giving some type of critical analysis. Molly Jong, unblock me if you have any character. So, Josh, time for a little bit of icing here. We have Cori Bush knocked out, boat raced, really not even close. I have to say too, and this was a fun little tidbit. Eric and I were before the show like, didn't she come from the same place that casting called AOC? Correct. Yeah, she was Justice Democrats. And so we went to the website, and let me show you what's going on the website.
Maybe she shouldn't have made the cut. I mean, I made this point. We talked about that
before. She really the best they could do.
Yeah, the casting call. I mean, I find AOC's policies absolutely reprehensible. I think she's horrible, but she is unfortunately effective at communicating with a lot of people.
Yeah, but Josh, 2 of them just went down, brother. And check out the website here. So we're going to have to,
Bush went down, yeah.
It's going to come back around, but the first 2 people on Justice Democrats who they helped get elected now are no longer in office. We have Jamal Bowman and we have Cori Bush. So let's wait till this re-ups. They haven't updated their video yet. I'd say it's about time.
Maybe they did. Maybe they don't have it right here anymore.
Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush.
There she is, yes.
There's 2 people.
They really need to update the website.
Come on, Justice Democrats.
It's hilarious that when this reporter came up to her, like, what was it, like a year or 2 ago, talking, and she's like, the rich need to pay their fair share. It's like, well, the reporter's like, okay, well, I mean, what would you consider to be a fair share? She's like, well, I mean, because the poor and pay lower tax rates. She's like, I'm not poor. The reporter wasn't actually accusing her of being poor. He's like, okay, but like even the middle class, that they pay a lower percentage of their income.
That was bad.
And she's like, had no response. It's like, this is what's kind of frustrating. Like, we are literally arguing with freaking idiots. Like,
so ignorant. She's so ignorant.
I mean, at least Harry Reid would just lie because he was smart enough to know that he couldn't win on the merits.
So here's my thing on this. She lost, and she's blaming AIPAC, of course. Because
she's not wrong, though.
AIPAC did dump a lot of money there and did the same thing to Jabal Momin.
AIPAC was the American-Israeli Political Action Committee. Yeah.
We need a little bit of background on both. So Justice Democrats, as we've discussed in a previous episode, their whole thing is that they are a talent search agency for progressives around the country. They're essentially putting out casting calls to find people that present well, that look good, look like they can fill the part, and basically go become elected representatives that carry on these extreme progressive values. And so their biggest crown jewel is AOC. They found her after she was working in a diner. She was like the perfect candidate, and now she's blown up, got a national profile. And so Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman were also a part of this Justice Democrats seen as success stories, now both no longer in Congress. Now, a couple things come to mind, and they're saying they were both knocked out by AIPAC, which is Israel's lobbying arm, and they poured a lot of money into both those races. Now, I think there's something to be said. Josh, if I could finish the thought here. They're gone. I see more of this happening, most likely. I think like what I see here is I don't think they make very many friends when they go to Congress, personally. I mean, Jabal Bowman, famous for pulling the fire alarm. And they're instantly found on these casting calls to elevate to a national profile. And so they're a little bit more obsessed with that, like, social media following, national audience. Like, their followings, well beyond most elected representatives.
Right. They love Twitter and Instagram.
Exactly. Like, they become kind of celebrity representatives. And so I think it doesn't make them popular with people that actually elected them. So they're really, they don't really care about their district. And then also they don't really make friends in Congress either. I mean, I think Cori Bush, famous for missing congressional meetings and being very abrasive. Same with Jabal Bowman. I mean, these people didn't go through the traditional path that it would take to get to Congress.
They didn't earn the trust of their constituency, which is how the system is supposedly set up, right? So like they didn't achieve this. This wasn't a meritocratic office, like that they somehow achieved this by coming up through the ranks and working hard. They were identified by Justice Democrats. They were funded by these massive progressive political action funds, and it was artificially pushed in. Not a fixed election for them, but definitely finger on the scale elections.
I mean, it's not like these two Justice Democrats were replaced by, conservative or even moderate Republicans. They're still going to be replaced by basically a socialist. Okay. But what the, what AIPAC decided, and it's not, I mean, I don't really want to say Israeli. I mean, basically, these are Jewish Americans. They are American citizens. So I'm not a big fan of this political action committee. I'm just trying to make sure people understand. I don't think it's, foreign influence per se. I mean, take it for what you will. But the point here is AIPAC decides these people are super pro-Hamas. And what if we could find another Democrat, another Black Democrat in the same district who is, in line with the views of this district, would care about the constituents of this district a lot more. They would just not be a Jew hater. And so that's what AIPAC's doing. They're finding someone else. Like, hey, if you want a representative who actually cares about the concerns of your district, is in line with the attitudes of this district, then why don't you pick this other person who actually will work hard, and they've shown it through being in city council or a state representative or something else like that. And they're not like a celebrity, Twitter, Instagram star, but they'll actually care about you. And AIPAC made a pretty convincing case against Jamal Bowman and against Cori Bush, and the voters rejected her 2-1 yesterday. You know what? It's not over yet, because a week from now, the voters in Minnesota will have a chance to discard Ilhan Omar. So
wow, that'll be a big
I don't know if
test.
it'll happen, but they came close 2 years ago. So we could actually get a third. Can you imagine?
Oh man,
it's just so reprehensible. Oh,
she's of course thrilled about Tim Walz. She already posted a bunch of support, and I mean, she's the most radical of the radical.
Candidate of the Marxists. They could not believe it. Like they got everything they wanted on Tim Walz.
Yeah, I mean, even like him changing the flag to resemble more the Somali flag is just like, what are we? So many things are just like, and then the biggest thing people are calling him
problematic because a white guy.
They were saying it had to
like,
do with like Native Americans or something. I don't know. But the latest thing too that everyone's hitting him on, they're calling him Tampon Tim because he put tampons in boys' bathrooms across the state. I mean, what are we?
What a weirdo!
I don't even. That's weird. Like, what do we? Oh my gosh! I feel like I'm like already live in the Twilight Zone by hearing someone call middle-aged, 39-year-old with 3 kids in a traditional marriage weird from Ohio. I mean, I know there's people that don't think Ohio exists. It does, but crazy talk. I mean, this is the weirdest guy ever. He shook his wife's hand. Now, I don't even want to get petty on this. I watched the Pennsylvania rally. He shook his wife's hand after speaking. Who does that? I've never shaken my wife's hand. Maybe ever.
They're very neighborly. They're just, he and his wife are neighborly. Shake her hand.
I cannot get over how weird this whole thing feels so weird. Okay, we move into the Twilight Zone now. Josh, we got you first. I got nothing in here for you. Do you have one for us today?
Was I supposed to?
Yeah, usually we do that.
Why would let Erica go first?
Okay.
Right. Erica, you're up.
Okay, well, first I'm going to just put in a little plug. I have 2. So first I'm going to put in a little plug. My interview with Catherine Pakaluk over at Edify is live. It's getting a lot of clicks, which I'm so excited about. We talked about the decline in births, the birth rate, decline in marriage.
Erica.
Yeah.
Her name is pronounced Pakaluk.
Pakaluk?
And I had someone email in very angry. Not angry. She was disappointed as an Ave graduate that I would not correct you because she was at Ave. Pakaluk. I have to do it. Sorry, that was just ringing around my head for last week. And she said, you got to catch it next time. I was like, all right, I got you.
All right.
Pakaluk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nickname people get so sensitive.
Catherine Pakaluk. I'm from the Northeast. I mispronounce everything.
I'll get it.
Nothing exists for me west of the Hudson River. So you got to understand where I'm at.
East Coast elite.
Here.
Can't believe we have a Canadian on this podcast.
It's terrible.
I am not a Canadian. Oh my gosh. Anyway, the interview's great. It's getting a lot of traffic. Please head on over there, give it some likes, share it everywhere. I think that I loved talking to her as a fellow super para, or super para being someone who's had 5 or more children. And
is that really the name for
it? Was just great. What?
Is that really like a thing? Super para is someone with 5 kids or more?
Yeah, super para. So
That's
there we
sick.
go. I learned
Okay, cool.
this about myself. It was very fun. But she's just so smart and articulate. And it was a very hopeful conversation. A lot of times when we talk about the birth dearth and the declining birth rates and demographic winter, it can get dark and scary. But this was a very hopeful conversation. So I hope you go check that out. My Twilight Zone, I wanted to just go back to our Olympics still going on. You might have seen that Slovakia has pulled out of the closing ceremony. But this week in Paris, we had a bus show up. Everyone loves a bus. 7 members of the Christian NGO Citizens Go showed up in a bus, large, with it was wrapped to show the mockery of the Last Supper that occurred at the opening ceremony. And there was just a message on the side that said, "Stop attacks on Christians." The 7 people in that bus were promptly arrested by the Paris police for driving this bus. Yes, this footage that we're watching right now on the YouTube, this is from within the police van. They were filming themselves as they're being carted away to the 16th precinct in Paris. And they were told that they were being arrested for failing to advise the police that they were holding a protest. The whole thing was super sketch. They were held overnight. The females in the group were like strip searched for drugs.
Whoa.
And then they were let go. They were released the next morning because the arrests were made on, this was like, it was weird. It was a procedural violation by the police. And in Paris, a protest, it's not just one vehicle. It has to be multiple vehicles and multiple people, and there have to be like crowds involved. So they weren't even arrested on a charge that made any sense for what they were doing. So this is getting a lot of attention in the European news outlets. I think that it's sort of a snapshot of the state of free speech over in Europe and the UK right now. But this was clearly an intimidation move. There are reports that the orders came from really high-level political authorities because there was no violation of local laws going on. So this was an intimidation move in the middle of the Olympics, just saying basically, Christians, shut up about this, and how dare you defend yourselves publicly.
Jeez.
Yeah, pretty chilling going on. They were released, and people are looking into this, but it was very chilly move.
I actually got a really interesting email from someone. I think they lived in the UK, but it's about it's funny, the Olympic protests, of course, but then in terms of free speech, like the state of free speech in Europe is really scary to a point where like Americans almost cannot appreciate. But yeah, I have an interesting email. If we have a little bit of time, I can read it out. Are you good with your Twilight Zone, Erica?
No, go for it.
I'm good. Good for it. Go
Cool.
for it. No, I wanted to open this up.
Shout out Cynthia. Cynthia said, hello, thank you for your research and quality work. So grateful for people who are educated, think critically, use logic and gain wisdom from above. I'm a convert from years of Protestantism and so beyond grateful to be Catholic. I just returned from Scotland and was surprised by how many people I met from London who are extremely upset about the UK government and are fleeing cities like London. One young woman in particular said she left for the summer because there are so many bad things happening there and people are being silenced. She was full of anxiety over this. At times, listening to some of the news blasted in various places, I saw how controlled it is and so biased. They hate Trump, and many from Scotland that I spoke with had the same sentiment. Not once when I asked why they hated him did I get a reasonable answer. So many are a part of the groupthink movement. U.S. News, as usual, is covering up the truth about what is going on and twisting it to look like the UK groups who are speaking up are the radicals. The government is silencing those that would say anything against Islam and all the radical gangs that are raping, killing, causing fear, destruction, and havoc. Much of the same is going on in Ireland. I'm wondering if this is a topic you can bring up. I fear that the U.S. is being groomed and has been groomed for some time in the same way. People are labeled Islamophobes for saying anything against Palestine or Muslims in general. This is something bigger than we are being led to believe, and this movement is growing rapidly here in the U.S. I heard someone read a quote from, I think it was a famous atheist, Christopher Hitchens, from 25 years ago. It was prophetic. If you are a true Muslim, you must hate Christians. You read the Quran, there is no God or love, and Christians need to be eradicated. True Islam is pure evil. Ignorance of history has most in this country nullified when it comes to truth. Anyway, we love your thoughts on all this. Thanks again for all you do. Cynthia. I mean, I just think in terms of like speech as well, there's an example of, I think it was someone from Belgium got arrested and fined for having like group chat memes in a group chat he was a part of that didn't even say. Mm-hmm. And because so obviously we saw it going on with Paris, but it's kind of like we talked about it a little bit, but there's been so many stabbings. And then when people are mad about a stabbing, it's like, well, that's punishable by everyone needs to go to jail. Essentially, it's like, well, what are we doing
straight
here?
To jail. Well, we were talking about this last time. I mean, the UK is on fire right now. Talk about Minneapolis. It's like Minneapolis times 15 cities, right? There are these uprisings in just kind of the dam sort of seemed to break with the stabbing of the young girls in the dance studio last weekend. And the response from the government is to just put the boot on the face of these working class white people who are enraged over the takeover of their country by radical progressives and allowing in this extreme Islamist massive incoming immigration waves. And I'm following, for those of you who want to know more, I would really recommend Konstantin Kisin. He's a British former stand-up comedian turned political writer. I mean, the comedians are the ones saving civilization over there. Right. Francis Foster, really good. Lawrence Fox.
In our own country too. Yep.
Yeah. And Lawrence Fox is really good. Follow them. I listened to, I need to look into Tommy Robinson a little bit more. I listened to Jordan Peterson's interview with him. That was eye-opening.
He's a thought criminal. He's a big time thought criminal over there.
Yeah, been taught thought crime. Yeah, and yeah, he's served multiple jail sentences for things like he did a documentary on a stabbing in a school, and he said that the kid was Muslim, and that's in it. Not allowed to say that. So yeah, it's if we are 15 to 20 years behind Europe in general with things like gender stuff, ideology, Marxist socialist policy. We don't want this. So basically we need to defeat Harris Walz is the message here.
Yeah.
We don't want to get to where Paris is right now.
Because if so, we are all thought criminals, no doubt. Here on the LOOPcast.
Yeah.
I mean, they're trying to do it here in Michigan with the Attorney General. She's put up a misinformation, hotline thing. So
right. Okay. So I'm going to bring it up here. So a little known fact about Josh, he is somewhat of a domain squatter. So he will buy up internet domains just in case they become useful at a later date, because that's just the way the system works. So
it's a hobby.
The Harris campaign is running. Harris Walz campaign is running into some problems, and it's because of people like Josh. So this is the wrong link. Yeah. Here we go. A trademark lawyer sold the domain name clintonkane.com in 2016. He is sitting on Harris Walz right now. So if you try to go to harriswalz.com, you're not going to get the newest campaign from Kamala Harris. You're going to get something talking about domains. So I think I had the actual, like if you click on it, what comes
that's
up.
Less of a thing as it was like an 04,
I need some stories basically. Here we go. So if you go, you get this. And then it goes to
Brat, right?
Yeah, Brat Summer, as you guys know. And then I think if you click again, it'll go to this communer.com.
She's gone from Brat to worst.
And it has harriswalz.com. He's selling it for $15,000. I'm sure the Harris campaign is going to buy it, but as of right now, it goes to here in case anyone wants to buy it off this guy before Harris Walz. But Josh, do you have any stories of successful squats that you've done?
Why don't you type into your browser there for me something, would you?
Yeah, what's up?
You ready?
Yeah.
Why don't you type in CatholicsForCamala.org?
Is it for like the number 4?
Nope. Spell it out.
.org.
Yeah, do the .org first. See what comes up there. Catholics for Kamala. Oh, join the Knights of Columbus. I don't know how that happens.
It's the Knights. That's awesome.
Of course, you remember
how did that happen?
Joining the members. Joining the Knights of Columbus makes you disqualified to serve as a judge in the federal.
Dude, I can't believe you did this.
A funny little thing to do.
Anyone else?
It's not the only domain I have. Actually, I have CatholicsForCamala.com as well, not just the .org. So
let's check that one out.
What does that one go to, guys?
And this is kind of fun.
Catholics for Trump.
Destroyed.
I love you, Josh. That's awesome.
This is what I do. I just a little fun.
Oh man. Wow. Do you have any that you had in the past that you've made either big money off of or like what are some notable ones past politics?
I mean, it's not really that much. I mean, I think I sold one for a couple $100 or something.
Come on now. That's a little hustle.
But that one was, that's just classic political ops kind of stuff.
I can't believe you did that. That's so awesome.
Yeah. So tell your friends, CatholicsForCamala.org, CatholicsForCamala.com.
Yeah. Everyone head over there.
No. So I got my little thing here on the Twilight Zone. So,
we're back to you.
A new book that came out by Megan Basham. She is just on fire for the Lord. She's got this book called Shepherds for Sale, where she just goes through and says all these evangelical leaders have bought into the gender baloney, the Marxist baloney, and they're basically embarrassed of being Christians, and they don't care about the gospel. And, look, they're evangelicals. Why do we care? It's like, actually, look, obviously I'd like every evangelical to convert to the Catholic Church. Yes, of course. However, if they're not, I'd like them to be good Christians who actually believe in the gospel, who
have sanity,
who believe in Jesus Christ, and consider abortion to be a problem, and then, but see, who's the biggest evangelical Christian in political life today? It's David French.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Phil Vischer, the creator of VeggieTales.
No, I meant like in terms.
Okay.
I mean, so David French is a guy who'd argued for religious liberty stuff for many years, and then now he's made up a claim of basically he spent the last 8 years attacking and berating and shaming any person who is like, well, Trump's got some bad things, and adultery, but I got to hold my nose and prevent Hillary Clinton from getting into power because she's going to do all these horrible things. And he would say, how dare you, dare you, dare you. And so how is he going to handle? I mean, he's been totally pro-Hillary, totally pro-Biden, and now in favor of Kamala Harris. So how is David French? He's now hired by the New York Times editorial board to use their big platform. And why did they give it to him? Why did they give it to an evangelical? Because he's going to spend every waking hour attacking Christians, evangelical Christians, for their pro-life witness, for being pro-marriage. He attacks them every day and shames them. That's what he does all day long. And
wait, Josh, this is
face to face. So here,
wait, Josh,
Walz gets the nomination for vice president under Harris. And what does David French do? He's got it. What is he going to do? Is he going to say, finally, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. I can't do this.
Probably
I can't
not.
vote for it. Maybe just write in Mickey Mouse for president. No, he doubles down. He says, I'm a conservative never Trumper. I would absolutely prefer a more moderate VP pick, but I also know I belong to a microscopic constituency. So I'll just have to content myself with not being a felon and sex abuser and not attempting a coup and not sacrificing Ukraine to authoritarian maniac. This is what he writes. 100 years from now, people will talk about the Ukraine war as pivotal. I mean, I'm about to lose my mind. You honestly are. Abortion is raging all over the place. Cities are being burned like Minneapolis. We're having 5-year-old kids going through gender transition surgery, and you are more concerned about Ukraine? This guy is bona fide nuts.
Have you seen the memes? It's
bought and paid for by our elite.
So
when does he get to stop calling himself a conservative? I mean,
the David French
I've been
thing,
waiting for 15 years for him to stop calling himself that.
Isn't he like the Blessings for Liberty guy?
Me, you say, well, David French said da da da. Oh my gosh, throw that guy in the river.
So he's the guy that does like the Blessings of Liberty, basically. Like I've seen memes as like the Christian case for something obviously not Christian, and it's always from David French.
Yep.
But I'm more of a VeggieTales guy myself.
He's almost a parody. Like, what is the Christian conservative case for gender mutilations? What is the Christian conservative case for drag queen story hours? He'll do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, the thing is, it's like he's a whore. I mean, he'll just give out and he'll argue anything to the progressive left, and he'll do it without any shame. It's amazing.
Can I set up a debate?
Shame.
Josh, I'll set up the debate with you guys.
Yeah, I'd love it.
I'll get you going on.
I'll moderate.
Josh, it sounds like you fired up on French, man.
This
has been a tough episode for you, Josh.
Same kind of man.
Josh, we had to talk about someone ruining Minnesota, your birthplace, and then we have to talk about David French on the same day. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the James Martin of evangelical church. Except I don't think he actually, fishes from the other side of the boat like Martin, but.
Okay, so I have a few things I need to point out at the end of this episode, okay? One, my camera is still running. So just.
Yes. Slow clap.
Clap it up in the chat. Camera is still running.
Actually, I feel, golf clap.
Shout out to my boy from Sony. I called Sony support. We did a ton of things. Shout out Sony.
Thanks, Sony.
A French dude. He's chill.
Awesome. And Josh's mic worked the whole time.
Josh's mic worked. Erica, great as always, of course. Great episode. But we're here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I think we set a record for the chat today. I see 122 people in there. Pretty awesome.
Super fun.
Thank you guys for joining. Super fun Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You know where we are, live on YouTube. Leave us reviews on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Help us out a ton. You can email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. But of course, best way to do it, become a champion, support us monthly. The lifeblood of everything we do here. We're so grateful for that. And we will be back at you on Friday with a Friday episode. Go check out Erica's interview. It was sick. Dr. Pekalik, she's a legend. And pray for us. We're praying for you. St. Thomas More, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and St. Fidelis, pray for us.